So, here's some news stories that I found interesting. So, I just learned about this on Paul's Security Weekly. Microsoft, apparently, the old technique, which I've talked about in my friendship class, is when you're done using a hard drive, you just smash the whole thing with like a wood chipper. And that's an option. But apparently, Microsoft is doing better. They're using automated robots with, I think, AI, and the robots will take apart the hard drive and remove all the reusable components, like the magnets in a circuit board, and they'll only smash the platters, which is pretty good. They use an automated machine, so it doesn't have to pay a human to do this, take apart all these old things. And Microsoft apparently destroys millions of hard drives a year. So the amount of material that's reused is greatly improved. So that seems like a good thing. And you don't hear this very often. Apple put a bad update for iPad OS, and it's bricking them, bricking your M4 iPad Pros. I don't have an M4, I got an M1. Whoever has an M4, apparently you're in trouble. Although, I must say, I don't put on Apple updates in any kind of hurry. And but anyway, if you do, apparently brick some of the devices, and they're pulling the update back. So that's pretty gruesome. Hello, honey. So this one's pretty interesting. An aerospace engineering firm had an old unmanaged server, which means they had an old server that wasn't being watched anymore and wasn't being updated, and it was still connected to their network. And it was incompatible with their monitoring software that would monitor log entries and stuff. So it was unmonitored, and so the bad guys took over and lived on it for 4 months, figuring out how to hack the rest of the networks and stuff. This is a real big problem at many companies, and especially at colleges. People stand up servers, connect them to the network, and then just sort of forget about them. And nobody really knows what they're for, and nobody turns it off. This is a real common way you get hacked. You have some unprotected old device you forgot about on your network. So one of the elementary network security activities is to audit your network, list everything, make sure everything is like under proper control. So Israel hit Lebanon with the exploding pagers that a student pointed out last night, and of course that turned out to be true. And now they also hit them with deadly walkie-talkie blasts. And one thing I heard from a rumor, from supposedly some inside military source, but it's a rumor, so, is that they're going to invade Lebanon and kill all these guys. So there's just a way of softening them up to blow up their pagers. So I don't know. We'll see. I hope not. But the Israeli war situation just seems to be getting worse and worse, and I imagine we will get sucked into it. So C++ is responsible for most of the security flaws that we exploit in the exploit development class that's coming next semester. And so the man that wrote C++ is saying he can make safe C++ with the safe C++ extensions proposal, with just a proposal at this point. I don't know how good it is. It looked a little confusing when I looked at it. And the whole problem with C++ is it's so confusing, developers can't figure out how to write the code well enough. So I don't know if yet another layer of confusion on top of that is going to help. I tend to agree with Mike Russinovich that the right move is to just abandon C++ and go to Rust, a more safe language. But these guys say Rust doesn't have all the features you need for the advanced things they're doing in C++, and developers aren't as used to it, so we'll see. We'll see how this all comes out. I know Linux and Windows are both rewriting kernel code in Rust now and planning to integrate Rust modules into it to improve security, but maybe they will decide to go back to C++ if there's a way to believe it's safe enough. So Boar's Head is responsible for a whole lot of the cold cuts that you get in the grocery store, and they are abandoning. They had an outbreak that killed 9 people of listeria, and they had one plant that had labeled this area low risk, and that's where it was coming from, and so they have decided to practice risk avoidance. They're going to close the plant and never make that product anymore, which seems like a kind of disturbing, outrageous thing. I mean, if they can't make that product anymore, how can they make all these other products? I mean, pretty extreme. But they said they harbored the deadly germ in a common area deemed low risk, and they had no written plans to prevent cross-contamination. So they're indefinitely closing that location and will never again produce liverwurst, which is a little hard to understand. Anyway, that's what they're doing. So Google is going to have a satellite constellation just to detect wildfires. Everybody is deciding it would be great to have a bunch of satellites up there now. Right now, more than half of all the satellites in orbit are Elon Musk's SpaceX, but everybody is planning to put them up. Amazon's planning to put up a fleet. A bunch of other people are going to put up satellite fleets. And so they're going to put up 50 small satellites in low Earth orbit to discover flare-ups and hopefully detect forest fires in the early stages. So we'll see what comes of that. This is an interesting argument. People know there's, I think this is in another country, the UK, but there's parking payment scams. And the way you pay for parking, you go to a sign, and the sign will have a quick response code. But people are just pasting other quick response codes on there. This is a well-known attack of quick response codes. So you go to a page which presumably will contain malware or some kind of phishing or something. So they're placing fake QR codes over the official parking machines. I've always wondered if QR codes are really such a good idea because you can do this. You can't read them. You can't know where they're sending you. All right. And Ticketmaster, the boss, is being sentenced for hacking CrowdSurge. However, his idea of hacking is extremely simple. He apparently worked at the other company and just used his old account, which they left active for years. Unless I'm confused, that's what happened here. CrowdSurge was a rival company to Ticketmaster, and he was CrowdSurge's senior vice president in 2010. So he left in 2012. He signed a separation agreement, which said he won't retain or share any confidential information, and then he just repeatedly breached the agreement by just logging in with his old account. So this is, there are many failures here, and one of them is whenever you terminate an employee, you have to terminate all their accounts, so they can't log in anymore, because this is very common that terminated employees are disgruntled in some way and they hack in. And yeah, Kamakari, and it does seem like we're heading towards Kessler syndrome. I tend to agree. Kessler syndrome is when the satellites, we put up so many satellites that they start colliding with each other, making more and more junk until you have sort of an exponential failure, and you end up corrupting space with so much junk that you can no longer launch rockets or satellites anymore. That's a risk. And in fact, it's already such a problem that if you want to send a rocket, you can't just send it up anymore. You have to carefully plot all the thousands of objects that are known to be in orbit, plot all their orbits, and try to figure out how to send your rocket up so it won't hit any of those things, because they're all moving like bullets. And so there's a new European Space Agency has signed a new contract for a Portuguese company to make a product for space traffic management, which is going to use machine learning to more efficiently figure out how you can possibly send a new rocket up through all this junk without getting hit by the junk. So it's already a considerable problem to pass through the layer of junk surrounding our planet. And it's only going to get worse. Unless somebody actually figures out a way to bring down the old satellites. And I think China is testing a system to do that, but it just seems prohibitively expensive. So Apple is going to lock the parts. So you can have your replaceable parts, like battery, display, and camera, linked to your Apple account, and then if they put in another phone, it'll freeze the phone. And they're saying this means people can't steal your phone and take it apart and sell the parts. The more cynical people say this means you can't repair your iPhone with third-party parts, and Apple can sort of lock you into the official parts like HP with their printer. But anyway, it's an interesting issue. It's now in the latest version of iOS. You can lock things to the hardware, battery locked to owner. So we'll see what the real effect of that is. Anyway, I'm going to stop the news.